CEO's son. Stole my work and took credit for it. When I complained, I got fired and blacklisted. So I took nuclear revenge that ended their careers and reputation. Hey Reddit, this is going to be a long one. I've been sitting on this story for about 6 months now, debating whether to share it. But the whole thing is finally wrapped up, and I need to get this off my chest because it's been eating at me. I never planned to completely destroy a tech company and tank multiple careers in the process. But then again, they never planned to give me the respect I earned either. So I guess nobody got what they expected. Let me start from the beginning. I'm 29 male, worked as a senior software engineer at a mid-sized tech company we will call VectorPath Solutions. Not a real name. I joined VectorPath straight out of grad school about 5 years ago. Started as a junior dev, worked my way up, nothing crazy. The company was decent at first. Good benefits, reasonable hours, interesting technical problems. The kind of place where you could actually build a career if you kept your head down and delivered quality work. The problem started about 2 years ago when the CEO's son joined the company. Let me tell you about this guy. His name is Trevor, 26 male at the time, fresh from business school where daddy's money and connections got him a degree he probably didn't earn. You know the type. Designer suits, expensive watch, always talking about his networking and his vision and disrupting industries. The kind of dude who uses synergy in casual conversation without a trace of irony. Trevor got hired as a product manager, which already made the whole dev team roll their eyes. Everyone knew it was nepotism. His dad literally owned the company. But we figured, okay, maybe he'd stay in his lane, do PM stuff, leave the actual engineering work to people who knew what they were doing. Wrong. From day one, Trevor made it clear he wanted to be involved in everything. Every sprint planning meeting, every technical discussion, every code review. He'd show up with his MacBook covered in startup stickers and throw around buzzwords like AI-powered and machine learning and blockchain integration. None of it made sense. Half the time he was suggesting things that were literally impossible or would break our entire system architecture. The senior devs started avoiding him. People would see him coming down the hallway and suddenly remember they had urgent meetings elsewhere. I tried being diplomatic at first, because that's what you do when your boss's kid is breathing down your neck. I'd listen to his ideas, explain why they wouldn't work technically, suggest alternatives. He'd nod along like he understood, then completely ignore everything I said and bring up the same garbage idea the next week. But here's the thing about Trevor. He wasn't just annoying and clueless. He was also incredibly insecure about being the boss's son. Anytime someone questioned his ideas, even politely, he'd get defensive. He'd make comments about how he went to a top business school, how he understood the market better than a bunch of code monkeys, how technical people don't see the bigger picture. Yeah, he actually called us code monkeys in a meeting once. HR got involved after that one, but nothing happened because, you guessed it, his daddy owned the company. The real nightmare started when our CTO announced this huge initiative. VectorPath wanted to break into the government contracting space. Federal agencies, defense contractors, the whole 9 yards. This was going to be massive for the company, potentially doubling revenue within 3 years. The problem was our platform wasn't designed for government security requirements. We needed to basically rebuild our entire data architecture to meet federal compliance standards. NIST frameworks, FedRAMP authorization, the works. This wasn't just adding some features. This was a complete overhaul requiring someone who understood both our existing code base and complex security architectures. Management asked for volunteers to lead the technical design. I raised my hand immediately. This was exactly the kind of project that could define a career. High visibility, technical complexity, strategic importance to the company. Plus, I'd been studying security architecture in my spare time for years. I had certifications, I'd built secure systems before, and I knew our platform inside and out. Trevor also volunteered. We got assigned as co-leads. The moment that announcement came down, I knew it was going to be a disaster. But I'm a professional, so I tried to make it work. Maybe Trevor would handle the business side while I focused on technical implementation. That would be fine. He could talk to customers and write requirements while I did the actual engineering. Nope. First week of the project, Trevor scheduled a kickoff meeting. He'd created this entire presentation about his vision for the government compliance overhaul. I sat there watching him present my ideas. Not inspired by my ideas or building on my suggestions. Just straight up my exact technical proposals from our previous discussions, presented as if they'd sprung fully formed from his genius brain. He even used the same terminology I'd invented. I'd come up with this concept called adaptive encryption layers for managing different security requirements across federal agencies, Very specific phrase that I'd spent weeks developing. There it was in his slide deck. Adaptive encryption layers. Copyright Trevor. After the meeting, I pulled him aside. Hey, I noticed your presentation included the technical approach we discussed last week. Just want to make sure we're aligned on who's driving which aspects of the project. He gave me this confused look like I was speaking another language. What do you mean? That's the approach I developed based on my analysis of federal requirements. Trevor, we literally spent 2 hours in your office last Tuesday, walking through exactly this architecture. I have my notes if you want to review them. He shrugged. I mean, maybe we touched on some similar concepts, but this is my technical vision. If you have concerns about the approach, you should bring them up in the proper channels. Proper channels. Translation. Go complain to my dad and see how that works out for you. I let it go. Figured okay, he's insecure, he needs to look good in front of executives, whatever. As long as I got to do the actual work and got credit where it mattered, I could deal with Trevor taking some bows. The next 3 months were absolute hell. I worked insane hours designing the new architecture. We're talking nights, weekends, barely seeing my girlfriend because I was so buried in this project. I created detailed technical specifications for every component, wrote proof of concept code to validate the approach, built security models, documented everything meticulously. Every week we had status meetings with executives, and every week Trevor would present my work as his own. He'd take my documentation, strip out my name, and present it to leadership. He'd talk about the innovative solutions he was developing, the technical challenges he was solving, his deep understanding of federal security requirements. I kept detailed records of everything, every email, every document, every code commit. I had timestamps showing I was the one doing the work. I wasn't stupid. I knew what was happening. I was building a paper trail. Other engineers on the team noticed too. Sarah, one of the senior devs who'd been at VectorPath for 7 years, pulled me aside after one particularly egregious status meeting. Dude, you know he's stealing your work, right? Like everybody can see it. I know. I'm documenting everything. Just waiting for the right moment to escalate. To who? His dad? Good point. But I kept hoping that when the actual implementation started, when we had to write real code and integrate real systems, the truth would become obvious. Trevor couldn't fake his way through actual technical work. Eventually, leadership would see who was delivering and who was just talking. The project reached a critical milestone around month 4. We needed to present our technical design to a federal oversight committee as part of the preliminary authorization process. This wasn't internal company politics anymore. This was government auditors who would actually review our architecture and determine if we were qualified for federal contracts. I spent 3 weeks preparing that presentation. Every technical detail, every security control, every compliance requirement. I knew this stuff cold. This was my chance to demonstrate expertise directly to people who would see through nonsense. 2 days before the presentation, Trevor called me into a conference room. Big smile on his face. Coffee from the fancy place downtown in his hand. Hey man, so I've been reviewing the federal presentation. I think it makes the most sense for me to deliver it. You know, given my role as product manager and my relationship with executive leadership, I felt my stomach drop. Trevor, this is a deeply technical presentation. They're going to ask detailed questions about encryption protocols, access control models, security architectures. This needs someone who built the system. I built the system. He said it so casually, like stating an obvious fact. You helped with implementation details, which I appreciate, but I led the technical design. For a second, I couldn't even speak. This wasn't just taking credit in internal meetings anymore. This was lying to federal auditors. If we misrepresented our capabilities and got caught, we could lose the contract and face legal consequences. Trevor, I have documentation showing every aspect of this design originated from my work. Email chains, technical docs with my authorship, code commits. I can prove who actually designed this system. His expression changed. The friendly facade dropped, replaced by something cold. Listen, I don't know what you think you're proving with your little paper trail, but here's reality. I'm the product manager on this initiative. My name goes on deliverables. That's how organizations work. If you have a problem with chain of command, maybe you're not cut out for projects at this level. He left the conference room. I sat there for probably 20 minutes, just processing what had happened. That night, I put together a formal complaint, took every piece of evidence I'd collected, and organized it into a clear timeline, showed definitively that I had designed every aspect of the federal compliance architecture, while Trevor had contributed nothing but buzzwords. I scheduled a meeting with the VP of Engineering and the head of HR. The meeting was the next morning. I walked in prepared. I had printouts, timestamps, commit histories, email threads. I presented everything calmly and professionally. This isn't about ego or credit. This is about technical accuracy and legal liability. Trevor doesn't understand the system well enough to present to federal auditors. If they ask technical questions he can't answer, we lose the contract. The vice president of engineering, James, listened to everything, nodded along, took notes. When I finished, he looked uncomfortable. This is concerning. You're right that technical accuracy matters for the federal presentation. Let me talk to some people and figure out the right path forward. HR lady chimed in. We take these concerns very seriously. This will be investigated thoroughly. In the meantime, please don't discuss this matter with other employees. We need to handle this through proper channels. I left that meeting feeling cautiously optimistic. I'd done everything right. Stayed professional, brought evidence, focused on business impact rather than personal grievances. Surely they'd see reason. The federal presentation happened the next day. Trevor delivered it. I had to sit in the back of the room and watch him present my work while confidently answering questions with information I'd prepared for him in briefing documents. We passed the preliminary review. The federal committee approved our technical approach. Everyone celebrated like we'd won the lottery. Trevor got praised by executives for his brilliant technical leadership. The CEO, his dad, literally called him the future of this company in the all-hands meeting. I got thanked for my implementation support. That Friday afternoon, I got called into HR. The lady from before was there, along with the VP of engineering and someone from legal I'd never seen before. They all had serious expressions. The kind you see before really bad news. We've completed our investigation into the concerns you raised. Unfortunately, we found that your allegations were not substantiated by the evidence. What? I brought you timestamps, documentation, everything. Legal guy jumped in. The documentation shows collaboration on the project between you and Trevor. As product manager, it's appropriate for Trevor to represent technical work in external presentations. That's a standard organizational structure. He didn't collaborate. He took my work and put his name on it. There's a difference between representation and plagiarism. HR lady gave me this pitying look like I was a child who didn't understand how the world works. We understand you put significant effort into this project. That effort is appreciated. However, making serious accusations against colleagues, particularly those in leadership positions, creates a hostile work environment. We need to discuss your future at VectorPath. My future? I filed a legitimate complaint with documentation. Legal guy slid a folder across the table. We're prepared to offer you a generous severance package. 3 months salary, continuation of benefits, and a neutral reference. In exchange, you'll sign a separation agreement and NDA. This is in everyone's best interest. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. You're firing me? For reporting someone stealing my work? We're offering a voluntary separation with favorable terms. The alternative is termination for cause based on your creation of a hostile work environment through unsubstantiated allegations against a colleague. That would not include severance and would significantly impact your future employment prospects. There it was. Sign the NDA and take the money, or get fired and blacklisted. Trevor's dad was making the problem go away the only way executives know how. I should have fought it. Should have gotten a lawyer, gone to the press, made noise. But I was 27 years old, terrified, and they made it very clear that fighting would destroy my career worse than leaving quietly. I signed the separation agreement that day. The NDA was ironclad. I couldn't discuss the circumstances of my departure, couldn't badmouth the company, couldn't disclose any information about projects I'd worked on, including the federal compliance system. Violation would result in $1 million penalty plus legal fees. They escorted me out of the building immediately after signing. Didn't even get to clean out my desk properly. They boxed up my stuff and shipped it to my apartment. In the box was a framed photo of the team, a company coffee mug, and the notebook where I documented everything. Everything except that notebook was now useless to me because of the NDA. Turns out the severance package came with strings too. VectorPath sent a standardized reference to any company that called. The language was neutral enough that it wasn't technically negative, but any experienced hiring manager could read between the lines. Separated from the company to pursue other opportunities. No, we would not rehire. No, cannot discuss details due to confidentiality agreements. For 4 months, I applied to jobs, got interviews, made it to final rounds, then suddenly would get generic rejection emails right after references were checked. This happened 7 times. Same pattern every time. I finally connected with a recruiter I'd worked with before. She leveled with me. Look, I'm going to be straight because I like you. Word is out that you're a problem employee. Someone at VectorPath is making calls behind the scenes. Nothing actionable, just friendly warnings between executives. You stirred up trouble, made accusations, created drama. That's the story making the rounds. They blacklisted me. VectorPath didn't just fire me. They systematically poisoned my reputation across the entire industry. My savings ran out. Had to move back in with my parents in their basement. Had to break up with my girlfriend because I couldn't afford to do anything anymore. Watched my entire life collapse because I'd had the audacity to ask for credit for my own work. Every night, I'd lie awake in that basement bedroom replaying everything, wondering what I could have done differently, wondering if I should have just kept my head down and let Trevor take credit. At least then I'd still have a job and a future. But mostly, I was angry. The kind of deep, cold anger that doesn't go away, that sits in your chest and hardens into something sharp. 6 months after getting fired, I was still unemployed. The tech industry is small, and apparently VectorPath's Whisper campaign was effective. I'd basically given up on finding another engineering role. Started looking at career changes, maybe going back to school for something completely different. Then I got a LinkedIn message from a guy named Graham. His profile showed he worked at a company called Sentinel Systems. Never heard of them, but they apparently did cybersecurity consulting for government agencies. The message was brief. Heard about your work on federal compliance architecture. Interested in discussing opportunities? Let's grab coffee. Normally I'd be suspicious, but I was desperate. Met Graham at a coffee shop near my parents' house. He was maybe 45. Looked like a guy who'd spent 20 years in the military before transitioning to private sector. Calm, direct, no nonsense. He didn't waste time with small talk. I know what happened at VectorPath. I know Trevor stole your work. I know they fired you for complaining about it. My heart started racing. How do you know that? Because Trevor is currently shopping that federal compliance architecture around to potential investors. He's trying to spin off a separate company based on your technical designs. And he's doing it badly enough that people in the federal contracting space are starting to ask questions. Turns out Graham had been approached by Trevor about investing in this new venture. Trevor had pitched the whole thing as his own innovation, his technical vision, his brilliant solution to federal compliance challenges. But Graham had actually reviewed the technical documentation, and something seemed off. The architecture was too sophisticated for someone with Trevor's background. So Graham did some digging. He found my name in early commit histories before VectorPath's legal team had scrubbed everything. Found my posts on technical forums where I'd discussed security architecture concepts that showed up in Trevor's pitch deck. Put the pieces together. Your work is impressive. Graham said it simply, like stating a fact. The adaptive encryption layer concept is genuinely innovative. I've been in this space for 20 years, and that's the most elegant solution to multi-agency security requirements I've seen. Thanks. That's nice to hear. Nobody at VectorPath seemed to think so. Oh, they know how valuable it is. That's why they stole it. Graham leaned forward. Here's my question for you. Do you want to keep wallowing, or do you want to do something about it? What do you mean? I mean, Trevor is out there right now, shopping your intellectual property to investors and government contacts. He's misrepresenting technical capabilities he doesn't have. Sooner or later, someone's going to call his bluff, and when they do, the whole house of cards comes down. Graham paused. Unless someone helps speed up that process, I don't know if I'm allowed to. The NDA. The NDA prevents you from disclosing proprietary information about VectorPath, but it doesn't prevent you from working in your field or discussing general technical concepts. And it certainly doesn't prevent you from documenting publicly available information about people misrepresenting their credentials. What are you suggesting? Graham smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. I'm suggesting you come work for Sentinel Systems. We have several federal contracts that could benefit from someone with your expertise. And as part of your role, you'd naturally be attending industry conferences, networking with government contracting officers, participating in technical review committees. People talk at conferences. Word gets around about who's legitimate and who's not. 2 weeks later, I started at Sentinel Systems. The job was everything Graham promised. Good salary, interesting work, respected colleagues. But more importantly, Graham gave me access to the federal contracting world that VectorPath was trying to break into. My first assignment was attending a Department of Defense Security Symposium in D.C. Lots of government program managers, contracting officers, technical reviewers. The exact people Trevor needed to impress to win federal contracts. I didn't have to do anything dramatic. Just attended sessions, participated in technical discussions, made sure people in the community knew my name and my expertise. When conversations turned to new vendors trying to enter the space, I'd casually mention some of the challenges around federal compliance architecture, the complexity, the depth of knowledge required, the importance of having people who actually understood the technical details rather than just presenting slide decks. Networking is a beautiful thing. You don't have to badmouth anyone directly. You just have to be present, be knowledgeable, and let people draw their own conclusions when someone else shows up who clearly isn't. 3 months into my new job, Trevor got invited to present at that same DoD symposium. His company, Federal Secure, had gotten enough early investor interest that government folks wanted to see what he was offering. I was in the audience when he presented. It was almost painful to watch. He was using my architecture, my terminology, my concepts, but when the Q&A started, things fell apart fast. A senior technical reviewer from NSA asked a detailed question about key management in the adaptive encryption layers. How do you handle rotation cycles across disparate agency environments with different refresh requirements? It was a good question. I knew the answer because I'd designed the system to handle exactly that scenario. Trevor clearly had no idea what the guy was even asking. That's an excellent question. Trevor stalled. Our approach is to leverage best-in-class solutions that optimize for security and efficiency across the entire ecosystem. Pure word salad. The NSA guy frowned. Yes, but specifically, what's your technical approach to the key rotation problem? We utilize industry-standard protocols in conjunction with innovative methodologies. Another technical reviewer jumped in. Can you walk us through the actual implementation architecture? How does the system maintain separate encryption contexts while allowing authorized cross-agency data access? Trevor fumbled through a non-answer that made it increasingly obvious he didn't understand his own pitch. People in the audience started whispering. A few folks actually got up and left mid-presentation. After the session ended, several government technical reviewers approached me. They'd done their homework. They knew I'd worked on federal compliance architecture before Trevor. They wanted to know what the real story was. I couldn't violate my NDA by talking about vector path directly, but I could discuss general technical concepts. I could explain my approach to adaptive encryption layers in theoretical terms. I could walk through the security architecture that would be required to meet federal requirements across multiple agencies. They could see the difference between someone who'd actually built the system and someone who'd memorized a pitch deck. Word spreads fast in government contracting circles. Within weeks, multiple agencies had flagged Federal Secure for additional scrutiny. When you're trying to win federal contracts, the last thing you want is government technical reviewers questioning whether you actually have the expertise you claim. Trevor's company started hemorrhaging investor interest. Turns out venture capital firms don't love putting money into startups when the founder can't answer basic technical questions about their core product. But I wasn't done. See, there was another angle I'd been working. Graham had introduced me to someone at the Federal Trade Commission who specialized in investigating fraudulent business practices. Turns out when you pitch a startup to investors using misrepresented technical capabilities and stolen intellectual property, that can qualify as securities fraud. I couldn't give them information protected by the NDA, but I could point them toward publicly available information. Trevor's pitch decks were online. His patent applications were public record. His claims about developing the technology were documented in investor presentations. Meanwhile, I had published papers on security architecture concepts that predated Trevor's claims by years. I had conference presentations where I'd discussed adaptive encryption layers before Federal Secure existed. I had open source code contributions demonstrating my expertise. The FTC investigator could compare timestamps and draw their own conclusions about who actually developed what. 6 months after I started at Sentinel, Federal Secure collapsed. Investors pulled out. Government contracts got canceled. Trevor tried to salvage things by bringing in actual technical talent, but it was too late. The company's reputation was destroyed. But the real fireworks came when the investigation reached back to vector path. See, here's something I learned about NDAs. They protect confidential business information. They don't protect illegal activity. And corporate executives systematically blacklisting a former employee in retaliation for reporting misconduct? That's illegal. I'd kept records. Every rejection email. Every weird conversation with recruiters who'd heard whispers about me. Every company that suddenly went cold after reference checks. I documented the pattern. My lawyer. Yeah, I finally got a good lawyer once I had Sentinel money. Sent a letter to VectorPath's legal department. Very professional. Very detailed. Pointed out that their retaliation campaign violated several federal and state employment laws. Noted that we had substantial evidence. Mentioned that we were prepared to file suit unless they wanted to discuss resolution. VectorPath's lawyers freaked out. Corporate retaliation cases are expensive, public, and almost impossible to defend when the plaintiff has documentation. They came back fast with a settlement offer. I didn't want money. I mean, okay, I took some money, But what I really wanted was them to fix what they'd broken. The settlement terms were simple. VectorPath would send corrected reference information to every company I'd applied to, acknowledging I'd left due to an internal dispute that had been resolved in my favor. They'd send a letter to industry contacts clarifying that any negative information about me was inaccurate. They'd remove all record of termination for cause from their systems. And they'd officially acknowledge in writing that I was the primary architect of their federal compliance system. Oh, and I got a year's salary as damages. Plus, they covered all my legal fees. And they had to update their internal policies around IP attribution and employee complaints. The CEO, Trevor's dad, had to sign off on all of it personally. But we weren't done yet. Remember those federal investigators looking into Trevor's company? Well, they'd also started looking at VectorPath's role in the whole situation. Turns out there were questions about whether VectorPath had improperly transferred IP to Trevor when he was setting up Federal Secure, whether the CEO had given his son proprietary technology to start a competing venture. That investigation went on for months. I wasn't directly involved, but Graham kept me updated. Apparently, it got ugly inside VectorPath. Board members demanding answers. Shareholders filing lawsuits. The whole executive team having to testify about what they knew and when they knew it. The CEO ended up resigning. Took an early retirement package to avoid being pushed out publicly. Trevor was effectively radioactive in the tech industry. No legitimate company would touch him after the Federal Secure disaster. VectorPath survived, barely. They brought in new leadership, settled the shareholder suits, and tried to rebuild their reputation. But they lost the federal contracting opportunity. Too much scrutiny, too many questions about their technical capabilities and internal practices. All those government contracts they'd been pursuing, the ones my architecture was supposed to win for them, those went to other companies, including several that went to Sentinel Systems, where I led the technical implementations. I'm not going to pretend this feels like pure victory. It doesn't. I lost 2 years of my career, went through hell, damaged relationships, watched my entire life get turned upside down because I asked for basic professional respect. But Trevor lost everything. His startup, his reputation, his future in the industry he was supposed to dominate. His dad lost his company and his legacy. VectorPath lost hundreds of millions in potential federal contracts. Meanwhile, I'm a senior solutions architect at Sentinel making almost double what I made at VectorPath. I lead major federal projects, I present at conferences, I publish papers that actually have my name on them. Last month, I got invited to speak at a cybersecurity summit. Guess who was in the audience? Trevor. He'd gotten a job at some small consulting firm, probably through family connections. He looked miserable. After my presentation, he tried to approach me. I walked right past him without making eye contact. Some people aren't worth the energy of acknowledgement. Sarah, my old coworker from VectorPath, reached out recently. She'd left the company after the whole scandal broke, told me most of the original engineering team had scattered to other jobs. Nobody wanted to stay after seeing how management treated people. She asked if I felt vindicated. Honestly, I'm not sure that's the right word. Vindication implies you were fighting to prove something. I wasn't fighting for validation. I was just forcing people to face consequences they'd spent a lot of energy trying to avoid. You want to steal someone's work? Fine. But you better actually understand what you stole. You want to fire someone for telling the truth? Okay. But don't be surprised when that truth catches up with you later. You want to blacklist someone to protect your reputation? Go ahead. Just remember that reputations can be rebuilt. And sometimes the person you tried to bury knows where all the bodies are buried. I didn't destroy Trevor and VectorPath because I'm some vindictive person. I destroyed them because they made a simple calculation. They thought I was powerless, disposable, someone who could be stepped on without consequences. They were wrong. The weirdest part is how little I think about any of it now. For months after getting fired, that anger consumed me. Every day I'd wake up furious about the injustice of it all. But once things started falling into place at Sentinel, once the investigation started, once the consequences began rolling downhill for everyone who'd wronged me, the anger just faded. Now it's just a story I tell sometimes. A reminder that underestimating people is dangerous, that stealing credit might work in the short term, but eventually you'll be asked to deliver on promises you can't keep. My girlfriend and I got back together, by the way. She reached out after hearing through mutual friends that I'd landed on my feet. Said she was sorry for bailing when things got hard. I appreciated that, but I told her we'd both moved on. Sometimes relationships don't survive hard times, and that's okay. We're different people now. Got a new apartment in the city, actually bought a place, didn't want to deal with landlords anymore. It's small, but it's mine. Home office with a good setup for remote work. Close to Sentinel's main office for when I need to be on site. My parents are proud of me now. They didn't really understand what I did for work before, but they understand that I'm successful. That's enough for them. We have dinner once a month. It's nice. Sometimes former VectorPath employees connect with me on LinkedIn. I accept most of them. We don't really talk about the old days. What's there to say? We all survived a dysfunctional company and moved on to better things. I saw a job posting from VectorPath the other day. They're hiring for the same role I used to have. Looks like they still haven't managed to fully rebuild the team after everyone left. The posting had been up for 4 months with no takers. Word gets around about which companies treat their people right. Graham retired last year, sold Sentinel to a larger defense contractor for a ridiculous amount of money, made sure the acquisition included retention bonuses for key technical staff. My retention package alone was more than 3 years of my old VectorPath salary. Before he left, Graham took me out for dinner, told me he was proud of how I'd handled everything, said most people in my situation would have given up or gotten bitter, that I'd done something rare by staying focused on rebuilding, rather than just revenge. I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. The revenge part was pretty satisfying too, but I appreciated the sentiment. Trevor sent me a LinkedIn request last week. I left it sitting in pending requests. Maybe someday I'll decline it, or maybe I'll just let it sit there forever. A little reminder that some bridges don't get rebuilt. People ask me sometimes if I regret how everything went down, if I wish I'd handled things differently. Honestly, the only thing I regret is not standing up for myself sooner. I wasted time trying to be diplomatic with people who saw politeness as weakness. Should have documented everything from day one. Should have been more aggressive about protecting my work. But that's the thing about getting burned. You learn. You get harder. You stop assuming people will do the right thing and start preparing for them to do the predictable thing. These days, I watermark everything. Every design document, every architecture diagram, every technical proposal has metadata embedded showing authorship and timestamps. Call it paranoid. I call it learning from experience. My team at Sentinel knows I'm serious about credit and attribution. We have clear policies about who gets named on what deliverables. Nobody's work gets presented without proper acknowledgement. It's non-negotiable. Some of the younger engineers think I'm intense about it. They'll understand eventually. Usually after someone tries to take credit for their work the first time. The tech industry has a lot of problems. Stolen credit is just one of them. But it's one I'm in a position to do something about now. When I see it happening to someone else, I intervene. I make noise. I make sure leadership knows what's going on. Got a reputation for being difficult because of it. I'm fine with that. Better to be difficult and respected than easy and forgotten. There's a guy on my team now, junior engineer named Jake. Smart kid, really talented. Reminds me of myself at that age. Last month, he came to me worried because a senior manager was presenting Jake's technical proposal as a collaborative effort when Jake had done all the work. I pulled Jake aside. You documented everything, right? Commits, emails, design notes. Yeah, I always do after you told us that story about your old company. Good. Now here's what you're going to do. You're going to send a polite email to that manager and CC me and his boss. You're going to clearly outline your contributions with timestamps. You're going to state exactly what you designed versus what was collaborative. You're going to be professional and factual. Jake looked nervous. What if he retaliates? Then we have a much bigger problem than stolen credit, and I'll make sure it gets handled. But most likely, he'll back down once he realizes you're not someone who'll stay quiet. Jake sent the email. Manager apologized and corrected the record in the next status meeting. No drama, no retaliation. Just someone learning that taking credit for other people's work doesn't fly on teams I run. That's the thing about having leverage and position now. I can protect people the way nobody protected me. I can make sure the Jakes of the world don't have to choose between their careers and their dignity. Is that revenge? Maybe. A different kind than what happened to Trevor and VectorPath, but satisfying in its own way. I'll probably never know the full extent of what happened inside VectorPath after everything imploded. The lawsuits, the investigations, the board fights, all that plays out behind closed doors in conference rooms I'll never see. But I know enough. I know Trevor's name is mud in every industry circle that matters. I know the CEO's legacy is permanently tarnished. I know the company he built is a fraction of what it could have been. And I know I sleep pretty well at night now. No more lying awake replaying conversations, wondering what I could have done differently. No more anger burning a hole in my chest. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, eventually, the right people face the right consequences. That's enough. Update. Since people keep asking, no, I haven't heard from Trevor directly, except that LinkedIn request. No, I don't plan to accept it. Some doors don't need reopening. Yes, I'm still at Sentinel's successor company after the acquisition. Different name, same work, same team. Still leading federal projects. Still publishing papers. Still making sure my engineers get proper credit. The legal stuff is all resolved. Settlement agreements are final. NDAs are structured, so I can discuss what happened in general terms as long as I don't disclose specific proprietary technical details. Hence this post being okay to write. Someone asked if I feel bad about destroying Trevor's career. Honest answer? Number. He had every advantage. Money, connections, education, opportunities most people never get. He chose to use those advantages to steal from someone with less power. That's not bad luck or a mistake. That's character. Character has consequences. He's learning that now. Someone else asked if the whole thing was worth it. Worth the stress, the unemployment, the fights, the legal fees, all of it. Yeah, it was. Not because I got revenge or money or a better job, though those things are nice, but because I proved something to myself, that I wasn't going to stay down, that getting knocked down doesn't mean you lost. It just means you're on the ground for a minute before you figure out how to get back up. Some people stay down. They let bitterness and anger and defeat define the rest of their lives. I get it. It's easier to stay down than to do the work of getting back up. But staying down felt like letting Trevor and his dad win, and I wasn't going to give them that. So I got up, did the work, rebuilt, and made sure that on the way back up, there were consequences for the people who kicked me when I was down. That's the story. No perfect ending where everyone learns a lesson and shakes hands. Just reality. Some people win, some people lose, and sometimes the person everyone counted out ends up on top. Life's funny that way. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.